Hello everyone and welcome to episode 2 in this Living Souls range. Today we are talking about 25-year-old single grain from the Dumbarton distillery. This handy little bottle right there. And Dumbarton, let's do some facts and figures first. So I believe, from the top of my head, Dumbarton was opened in 1938. And it was a grain distillery, but also within it you had some Lomond stills, which aren't particularly common today. Within the distillery itself, it was part of a larger distillery complex, and one of the whiskies that came out of there is the long-lost Inverleven. Inverleven is a whiskey that I've never actually seen in the flesh or tried, so for me, Inverleven's almost a mythical, well, one of those Scotch whiskies that's still quite mythical and long-lost to my taste buds. If you are a fan of Inverleven and a Lomond still style, I believe I know one of the Lomond stills is now at Bruichladdich, and it's used to create their botanist gin. So if you like botanist gin, that comes out of a Lomond still. But what do we have here? This is a pair of refill casks. I'm going to assume, because it's grain, they're hogsheads, and based off the smell that's already coming out of the glass, we can certainly assume they were ex-bourbon casks. This is bottled at 50.5% ABV, natural colour, non-chill filtered, and is £80. I have no idea how many of them were made. 2 refill casks, 25 years. They weren't necessarily stored next to each other, so, you know, whatever I would say would be a guess, and it would be silly to do so. But looking at a particularly popular retailer's website just in front of me here, they have only 2 of them left, but I imagine there is more of that kicking around. So, grain, column distillate, normally aged in refill bourbon because it is the backbone of blended whiskey. And grain distilleries aren't the prettiest things in the world. They're more like industrial sites. So, you know, you've got to wear your hard hat and your steel toe cap boots, walk between the lines. It's very much an industrial style of distillation, continuous distillation. This particular distillery, Port Dundas, I think was closed in 2002. And it's now a housing estate, I think, or like flats or something. But anyway, let's dive into this 25-year-old single grain. That is everything you want from like classy old single grain on the nose. It is laden with like muffin mix and vanilla essence and sponge cake. The ABV does push a little bit more, certainly when compared to the 40-year-old blend we just tried, but underneath it you've got this buttercream and cinnamon. Not that you need to know this, but I'm currently trying to make my kitchen, I've turned it into a little bit of a cocktail nightmare. So I'm making a million different syrups and things. And the nose on this reminds me of something I've just made, which is oleo saccharum, which is where you take citrus peels, mix them with sugar, and it pulls all of the oils out of the citrus peel. And this reminds me of like lemon oleo saccharum, but then you've also got like pastry and vanilla custard and nutmeg. Very typical. I don't think, it's really difficult to do unusual things with old grain whiskey because typically it's just mellow and sweet and rich. But let's see texturally what's going on and in terms of taste as well. So if we are going to compare it straight to the 40-year-old, it does come across thinner, but that makes sense because even though the 40-year-old blend is a combination of grain and malt, this is all grain, and that continuous distillation typically gives you like a thinner mouthfeel because it's stripping a lot more flavour away and you're distilling to a much higher alcohol content. However, outside of that, where it lacks in like texture, it makes up for it in just pure flavour. I have developed quite a sweet tooth as I get older. I don't know if that's me just lying to myself, I probably am. And 2 of my favourite things in the world when it comes to sweet things are lemon. Like lemon desserts are my absolute go-to. Every year my girlfriend and I make like a lemon drizzle cake for my birthday because it's just my favourite thing in the world. And we typically scent the sponge with like vanilla essence and stuff, and this is just that in absolute buckets. It's nowhere near as complex as the 40-year-old, but again I think it's difficult to make grain complex due to many factors. As a result, what you get is a very straightforward, sweet, and at 50.5% ABV, a little bit spicier, which kind of rounds out some of the lack of texture. It gives you this kind of push of black pepper, and that really contrasts quite well with all of those big sweet notes. But let's try it again. I will say a little bit more interesting the second time round. There's almost this element of lemon sherbet. You still get the black pepper. For me, black pepper and lemon have this really interesting crossover. If you've ever smashed or crushed black peppercorns, you always get that kind of citrusy, lemony scent. So that kind of makes sense to me. The barrel spice is quite interesting. Given that they're refill casks, it doesn't necessarily state if they're first fill, second fill, third fill. Based on the colour, we can probably assume not first fill. They've probably been used a couple more times. Grain typically is aged in first, second, third, larger hogsheads. But yeah, it's just this custardy, vanilla-y, lemony, slightly spicy, rounded whiskey at a minimum of 25 years old for £80 at 50.5%. I don't think it's as good as the 40-year-old blend. So, but what it does remind me of is if you took Compass Box Hedonism, the old sort of standard release, and just dialed up the ABV from, I think that was it 43 or 46? I forget. I want to say it was 46 because most Compass Box things are not below 46. You took that 46 and just dialed it up to 50.5 because Hedonism always had a lot older whiskey in it anyway, and it tended to hover around that 14, 16-year-old minimum. But yeah, this is direct, sweet, a wonderful alternative to dessert at the end of a meal. This would pair particularly well with some nice like waxy cheeses and things, I think. So I'll save the rest of the bottle to do that with. But yeah, overall, not as complex as the 40-year-old. Still a really nice whiskey at good value for a 25-year-old anything. If you're looking for a 25-year-old bottle of whiskey and don't want to spend the earth on it, which you can with a single malt, this is a perfect alternative at £80. So I'm going to give that a solid 8 out of 10. It's wonderful, it's easy drinking, and it's from a company who I've not disliked anything they've released so far. Of the 9 whiskies I know they've released, I've tried 6 of them, and I liked all of them. So there we go. I purchased 3 of them, so there you go. But there you go. That's a solid 8 out of 10 for the 25-year-old Port Dundas single grain. And I'll see you all tomorrow for this, which is a particularly interesting thing. It's a Balblair 10-year-old, which has been finished, I believe finished or possibly fully matured in XO limousine oak casks. So XO cognac limousine oak. But join us for that tomorrow. That'll be very interesting. Balblair is wonderful, and I'll see you all then. Have a wonderful day. Cheers.